Getting your off season right is absolutely crucial for rugby players because, believe it or not, you should not spend the next 6 to 8 weeks just sitting on the sofa, going on holidays, drinking beers, eating what you want. Because what will happen is that you'll get to day one of pre-season and realize that you've absolutely ruined all your chances of having a great pre-season, which then sets you up to have a great in-season. So we want to make sure over the next 5, 6, 7 weeks, however long your off season is, that you have some sort of blueprint that you can follow, which is going to allow you to get yourself ready for pre-season. That is literally the aim of off-season. So let's get into it. And make sure you hit subscribe so that you can get weekly trainings like this every single week. So the first step that you need to start tackling within your off-season is making sure that you start to strengthen, rejuvenate, however you want to say it, basically common sites of injury that are found within rugby, okay? There's no doubt about it that you are sitting here right now watching this video and you have some sort of area on the body that is giving you, a little bit of jip from last season, okay? So in terms of the common sites of injuries that we're looking at things like your ankles, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your hamstrings, your neck. These are all areas that are really going to take a beating when you are playing rugby week in, week out. So you need to make sure that within your gym sessions that you're taking the time to strengthen these areas and basically make sure that they are ready to go once we get back into rugby for pre-season. Okay, so how you're going to do this is a few different ways. You could either use these exercises and use them as a warm-up and as a sort of rehab/prehab plan. So you're killing two birds with one stone, where you're warming up for the session ahead, but you're also strengthening those areas that need to be strengthened. Or the other way is that the main lifts that you're doing within your off-season sessions, which I'll help cover with you in a second, you're then tagging these exercises on with that. Okay, so for example, let's say you were doing a trap bar deadlift for your main lift for that session. Well, we want to kind of choose muscles that are not really used within that exercise. So we could do something like a prone swimmer, essentially for your shoulder injuries. Okay, so just making sure that whatever exercise that you're doing, you kind of do an opposite muscle within that sort of prehab exercise. So you could go main lift and then tagging onto that then a common site of injury sort of rehab/prehab exercise will go really well with that. So you need to make sure that you're getting into any niggles that you had last year, you're getting into them and you're sorting those out straight from the off. The second step that you need to make sure that you're covering within your off-season training is that you're building capacity. Now, all this essentially means is that you're raising your ceiling of potential, okay? So what I mean by that is that you are going to be having very, very intense training blocks in pre-season, but you have to earn the right to do those intense training blocks, because what usually happens is that, believe it or not, majority of rugby players actually get injured during pre-season, and that is because they've just had a spike in workload way too fast and their body just breaks down and just can't deal with it. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're building capacity through the muscles, through the joints and the ligaments and things like that, so that when those intense training blocks do come along, your body's like, this is fine, I can handle it. And the way that you do that is by building strength through sub-maximal loads, okay? So you want to be making sure that you're lifting at around 50 to like 75%. You can go anywhere between sort of like 5, 6, 7, 8 reps, especially in the lower body. Don't go too high with the reps there, but just making sure that you're building capacity through sub-maximal loads, so that when you get to the more intense blocks and we start lifting at 85, 90%, 95% and things like that, your body is accustomed to high stress, high intensity, high volume, and it can actually recover from that session and not just break down and have lots of injuries, okay? So we want to make sure that we're building capacity through sub-maximal loads, and we also want to make sure that we're building capacity through lots of aerobic work, okay? And we can get that done with things like tempo runs, zone 2 work, whether that's off feet or running. These things are really, really good for us, right? So you want to make sure that by the time you get to pre-season week 1, you have this massive base of work capacity so that you can tolerate those more intense blocks further down the line. Number 3 is that I want you to actually build speed mechanics, and I do apologize for my awful handwriting here. What can you say? So essentially why I've put speed mechanics here, right, is because I'm not a big advocate in season for rugby players to be spending hours and hours on trying to work on speed or sprint mechanics, essentially. And the reason being is because you're not a sprinter, you're a rugby player, okay? And you trying to find the perfect angle when you're accelerating or when you're, doing max velocity work and things like that, is it really worth the juice that we're trying to squeeze out of it, essentially, when we could be working on other things in the season, okay? Off season is a little bit different. You have way more time and you're not doing any rugby sessions, essentially. Okay, so it's a good time to get in some very, very high skill work when it comes to speed mechanics. Okay, and how you're going to do this is splitting it into two different categories, right? Number one is that you're going to look at your acceleration mechanics. So basically your forward lean when you're trying to accelerate from 0 to 100. And then the other one is max velocity mechanics. So when you're hitting top speed, how are your mechanics looking then? Because we need to be a little bit more vertical, or a lot more vertical, and making sure that, of course, we're still preparing ourselves forward while doing that. Okay, so it's a really, really good idea to get on the field like 1 to 2 times per week and essentially get in some speed mechanic work to make sure that obviously once you get the pre-season and in season, we don't really have to spend too much time on these and we can do things that really, really matter, essentially. And then the last checkpoint of off-season blueprint is I want you to define success. So what I mean by this is, what is success to you? What do you need to get out of this off-season period in order to get you from A to B, in order to make you a better rugby athlete by the time week 1 of pre-season comes around and then by the time week 1 of in-season comes around, okay? So I'll give you an example of this. You might be a rugby player at the moment that is really, really lacking in size, okay? So you need to sit down and really work out, okay, what is going to define success for me over the next 6 weeks? Am I going to be trying to put on 3 kilograms of muscle mass? Am I going to be trying to, put on 5 kilograms or whatever it is? Again, if you need to lose weight, what's success to me? Do I need to lose 3 kilograms? Do I need to lose 5 kilograms? Something that is physical towards your game, you need to make sure that you're defining that, okay? Because I can guarantee you that if you're sitting here watching this now, you have a work on within your game. You have something that is seriously lacking within the game and is going to make you a better rugby athlete overall if you can just raise the bar of that certain aspect, okay? So make sure that you define success by setting yourself some targets and setting yourself some goals. Now, guys, this leads me on to the last point, is that I actually have an exciting opportunity for 10 rugby players coming up very soon. I'm going to be running a case study where basically you're going to be able to work with me, essentially. I'm going to be able to coach you through your off-season for a really, really, or much cheaper price, essentially, than what it usually would be, because I'm running things a little bit differently, and I basically want to have 10 sort of dedicated rugby players that really want to get better. I want to work with you guys and make sure that you have the best off-season possible, okay? So if you want to be a part of the case study, keep an eye out for my Instagram content very, very soon, okay? Because I'm going to be plugging all the information on there. Or if you feel like you want to lock in your place and you feel like you want to, get that sort of locked in, just message me off season on Instagram, okay? And then I'll put you onto the sort of note section on my phone. And then once I get everything ready, I shall give you a message and get you started from there.